The Avar are descendants of the Alamari barbarians that originally crossed over the Frostbacks into the Ferelden Valley around 2416 Ancient. Several distinct tribes emerged from the Alamari over the centuries. The Avar emerged as a distinct people around 1816 Ancient, populating the land around Lake Calenhad and the foothills of the Frostbacks, though some Avar are known to have settled in the Vvark Mountains across the Waking Sea at some point. In Avar legend, the founding of their tribe is attributed to a hero called Teara Brightaxe, who was thought to be a skilled warrior by outsiders until recently it was discovered the Avarian word that had been translated as axe actually meant hafted weapon, as her personal weapon was found to be a mage's staff. Tell the tale of Teara Brightaxe, mountain maker, spirit's bride, free her people, forged in fastness, made in mountains, hardy hide. Wise in wisdom, calm in counsel, great in gifts her grateful guests, sacrifice she did to spirits, took their teachings, followed quests. Bright her axe, unbreaking crystal, stirred to flame when temper flies, gifted from her leaf-eared lover, laughing lady of the skies. Bested blades of all who tried, maiden spurning all requests, Teara Brightaxe, dreamer's eyes, Avar mother of her making. Teara was a wise and beautiful chieftain of a tribe that lived near Lake Calenhad. She had many suitors, all of whom she rejected. Teara had a lover, however, a spirit said to have been the Avar goddess called the Lady of the Skies, taking the form of an elf. One of Teara's many suitors was a chieftain called Thelm Gold-Handed. Thelm Gold-Handed, fingers greasy, jeweled rings with glitter shone, took in tribes in times of trouble, fed them fat to weaken bone. Warriors great and great in number, sun-kissed swords to fight his wards. Drake-scaled shirts their bodies covered, heart wine stained the salty shores. Told his tribes a tale of treasure, over sea to north it gleamed, whispered words to drive the droves to Golden City where he dreamed, counseled quick in dreams alone, voices wiser man ignores, pushed the tribes until they screamed, heed the dreams and cross the waking. Thelm assimilated other tribes to his own by offering them gifts of gold, silver, and plentiful food. He offered such gifts to Teara's tribe when they suffered a harsh winter on the condition that she should marry him and come north to reap the wonders of the Golden City he saw in his dreams. Teara consulted her lover, who did not trust him at all and advised her against his proposal. Thelm did not take rejection well and attempted to conquer Teara's tribe by force, leading his men wearing shining armor and a sword of dragon bone. Teara and Thelm clashed, but ultimately Teara burned her foe with conjured fire. Blade of dragon bone, now blooded, warrior throats wrung raw with cheers. Teara stands, her bright axe blazing, legs still weeping battle tears. Bright the axe of leaf-eared lover, laughing lady of the skies. Fire flares as Thelm Gold-Handed, honey-tongued, repeats his lies. North to warmth and golden cities, whispers speak in dreamers' ears. Silver scorched the lyre flies, on raven speaks to dream unwaking. Teara was victorious, but she was wounded in the fighting, and forced to lead her people away from the plains of the Ferelden Valley. Other tribes of the Alamari that had taken up an agricultural way of life attacked and chased her tribe into the foothills of the Frostbacks, where they struggled in the cold, harsh winds before they found a cave to take shelter in. Unfortunately, the cave happened to be the lair of a dragon that immediately attacked Teara's tribe. She called out to her lover, the Lady of the Skies, and a bolt of lightning issued from the heavens to strike the mountainside, causing a cave-in that killed the dragon. Exploring the depths of the cave, Teara's tribe found a troop of dwarves led by a prince called Hendir, who were quite surprised to meet a tribe of towering human barbarians in the deep roads. Teara's leaf-eared lover advised her to trust the dwarves, and so she offered them trade and alliance instead of war, which they happily accepted. Her tribe grew in wealth and strength, ensuring the survival of the Avar. At her lover's suggestion, Teara lay with Hendir to produce a child. Her lover named the child Avvar, meaning our journey, yours and mine. She predicted that a descendant of Teara's blood, Morriganen, would one day shine with strength. From Teara's daughter comes the name of the tribe, the Avar. Teara Brightaxe, Avar chieftain, strong her tribe with dwarven trade, battles brought to men and demons, won with wisdom, fire, and blade. Then did Teara look to Hendir, dwarf prince friend, children giver, took her freedom, Hendir glad, wished her what he could not give her, chose her child to stand as chieftain after all last wrongs were righted, gifted goods of worldly want, left her tribe no more benighted. Skyward one last trek she made, to her lover dream delivered, raven feathered reunited, hearts both whole, now neither aching. After appointing her daughter as leader of the tribe and gifting her worldly possessions, Teara was laid to rest in a sky burial, so she could join her lover forever at last. The Avar came to dominate western Ferelden, and when the Tevinter Imperium invaded the valley in 715 Ancient, the Avar proved the most resilient of the Alamari tribes, though it is believed that some were forced to flee to the Frostback Mountains across the Waking Sea at this time. Several fortresses built by the Avar, with some help from the Dwarves, stand to this day, like Kinloch Hold, now home to the Circle of Magi of Ferelden, as well as the Fort of 1,000 Vigils, now known as Vigil's Keep, which likely explains the passages to the Dwarven Deep Roads in the fortress's foundations. The Avar were largely spared the ravages of the First Blight, which tore across the Tevinter Imperium for 2 centuries. In the same period, however, some Avar tribes did go to war with the Eastern Alamari clans, called the Clane, around 355 Ancient. Teara Brightaxe's prophesied descendant, Morriganen, did battle with an Alamari champion called Luthias Dwarfson, and the war ultimately ended when they slew one another in battle. The Avar would become more or less united with the marriage of 2 leaders toward the end of the First Blight, Hagar II and Thelois, whose son Mafarath assumed control of almost all of western Ferelden. Mafarath married Andraste, daughter of a powerful chieftain of the eastern Alamari, Andraste, who became the prophet of a new faith, and united the Alamari tribes behind her and Mafarath to invade the Tevinter Imperium in 180 Ancient. Over 10 years, Mafarath and Andraste conquered the southern Imperium that had been weakened by the First Blight in ongoing slave revolts. Mafarath was a talented war leader and proved a match for the generals of the Imperium, and Andraste filled their followers with unparalleled zeal. However, the conquest was brought to an end when they advanced on the Tevinter heartland, and despite a costly victory against the legions of the Imperium, Andraste was captured and executed in the imperial capital of Minrathous. Mafarath took the Alamari south and appointed his sons to rule the conquered lands. He took rulership of Ferelden for himself, and for 10 years an Avar ruled all of Ferelden. That was until Archon Hissarion, 10 years to the day of Andraste's death, revealed that Mafarath had betrayed his wife and delivered her to the Imperium. Mafarath quickly lost power and was ultimately murdered by his own sons. The Avar fell back to their traditional territory in western Ferelden, but in time some among the Avar would start to look west, to the other side of the Frostbacks. Around 20 years into the Second Blight, during the Divine Age, a tribe of Avar called the Jaws of Hakkon summoned the spirit of their god from the Fade to inhabit the body of a dragon. They attacked and raided eastern Orlais, attracting the attention of Emperor Cordelis Draken. Quite preoccupied combating the Darkspawn across half the continent, Draken asked his friend, the last Inquisitor of the First Inquisition, an elven mage called Ameridin, to hunt and kill the dragon. Ameridin did as Draken asked and tracked the Jaws of Hakkon deep into the Frostbacks. Soon after, Hakkon and the Hakkonites disappeared along with the Inquisitor. Centuries later, it would be discovered that Ameridin had been unable to defeat the dragon, but instead bound himself and it with time magic, trapping them deep in a Tevinter ruin. Some decades later, the Avar formed an alliance with the Chastened of southern Ferelden to invade the central plains of Ferelden in 150 Divine. Unfortunately for them, the Clane of eastern Ferelden had a champion called Hafter, who united them against the invaders. Hafter forced the chase in deep into the Kakari wilds and pushed the Avar away from their long-held territories around Lake Calenhad into the Frostback Mountains. The Avar would never again hold territory beyond the foothills of the Frostbacks. In time, the Clane of the Valley would be united by King Calenhad the Great, founding the kingdom of Ferelden. Among modern Fereldans, thoughts of the Avar are most colored by the events of 650 Steel, half a millennium later, when an Avar warlord called Balak led a massive horde to reave across the Banorn, putting it to the torch. It took 2 years to push the Avar out of Ferelden, and the damage they caused led to the greatest famine the kingdom has ever known. The event soured relations between Ferelden kings and the Avar for ages. In more recent years, the newly revived Inquisition investigated the ancient disappearance of Ameridan and befriended the Avar tribe of Stonebear Hold, while also contending with a revived Jaws of Hakkon, composed of Avar who had lost their homes to the Fifth Blight more than a decade earlier. The new Hakkonites were able to disrupt Ameridan's spell, leading to his death and the release of Hakkon, who was quickly killed by the new Inquisitor. Though their territory has shrunk with time, the culture and traditions of the Avar have changed little with the passage of centuries. The Avar tribes are divided into many holds, each led by a Thane. The Thane settles disputes among the hold by setting trials between the parties. What the trials will be depends on what god the Thane decides to invoke. The Trial of Korth, for example, involves the two challengers battling in verse while each is held aloft by their supporters. A Trial of the Lady would be a climbing race, and a Trial of Hakkon involves a duel with blunted weapons. The Thane may choose to handicap a challenger who's claimed they find foolish, like forcing them to climb with a stone tied to their backs in the Trial of the Lady. The spiritual leader of a hold is the Augur, a mage responsible for handling arcane matters, communicating with spirits and interpreting the will of the gods. Young Avar mages are actually bound to spirits for a time, as they learn magic from them, though this is strictly temporary. Holds also have a master of the hunt, the leader of a clan's hunters. Skalds are storytellers in charge of keeping a hold's legends and stories alive. Some holds may also have an arena where ritual martial contests are held in honor of the god Hakkon Winter's Breath. Each hold also has a hold beast that acts as a sort of sacred mascot of the clan, connecting them to their gods. It is revered and given gifts, though not kept as a pet. The beast roams free, and the Avar try to avoid feeding it too much that it stops hunting for itself. Stonebear Hold had a bear called Storvaka, for example. The health and happiness of the hold beast is considered an omen of the gods. Though Mafarath once ruled the Avar and married the prophet Andraste, her faith never gained a foothold among the tribes, and they still hold to the ancient gods of the Alamari. They worship Korth, the mountain father who provides all among the Frostbacks, the Lady of the Skies, lover of Teara Brightaxe who presides over the birds of the air and souls of the dead, the trickster Imhar the Clever, and many lesser gods between the many holds. There is also Korth's firstborn, the god of war and winter, Hakkon Winter's Breath, whose centuries-long binding in the form of a dragon I have already mentioned. That binding may lead one to ask if the Avar gods are real, which isn't a question that has a simple answer. The Avar revere the spirits of the Fade as gods to be petitioned and appeased for favor and advice. They will readily acknowledge that the gods they call to are spirits, essentially mimicking the Avar's own idea of who their gods are, but they do not believe this makes them any less real. Even with the death of Hakkon at the hands of the Inquisitor, the Avar will simply look to another spirit to embody their god. Life is hard in the Frostbacks, and thus few things among the Avar have permanence. This includes settlements, oaths, and marriages. When an Avar man and woman marry, the bride ties knots in a length of rope. However many knots the groom manages to untie before the bride could finish singing a hymn to a selected god will be the number of years they will be married. Brides have been known to make particularly tight knots or pick a shorter hymn if they are less than enthusiastic about the match. Avar men usually kidnap their wives, a statement that sounds worse than the underlying traditions make it out to be necessarily. In order to bring new blood into a hold, Avar men are expected to go to other Avar holds and announce their intentions. Failure to do so tends to create blood feuds. The kidnapping is a display of the man's prowess and determination. The woman is expected to put up some resistance, but often she helps or impedes the man's efforts depending on how receptive she is to him. The women sometimes make it known they desire a specific man, and a man may approach a woman directly to secure her agreement in advance. An Avar man who is caught in the attempt of kidnapping may expect a severe beating on the first attempt. On a second, they could very well be fed to the hold beast. The Avar value hold loyalty over blood, and kidnapped brides are expected to become loyal members of their husband's hold. Even brides taken against their will find themselves distrusted by their own family should they attempt to return. If an individual distinguishes themselves, for good or bad, they may receive a legend mark from other Avar that is often used in place of their surname. Svara Sunhair, for example, earned her legend mark when an enemy lit her hair on fire during a fight, and she did not have time to put it out until the battle was done. Despite the Avar's practice of raiding and occasionally invading their neighbors, especially their distant Alamari cousins in Ferelden, the Avar have traditionally strong relations with the Dwarves of Orzammar, who regard the mountain clans as a healthy deterrent should Ferelden and Orlais think to try and control Orzammar's surface entrance in the Frostbacks. Avar traders have also been known to peddle goods in human nations on both sides of the mountains. The Avar have the distinction of being one of the only populations of humans to have totally resisted the influence of both Tevinter and the expansion of the Andrastian faith, making them one of the most remarkably unique peoples in Thedas. Well, that's it for now. There were a few irregularities I found while researching this video. Most of it was old lore that got retconned when Jaws of Hakkon came out. For example, the Avar Grey Warden Kell from The Calling is revealed to have once been the leader of a hold called a Jarl. I personally suspect this change might just be because the developers thought it was a little too on-the-nose Skyrim. There's also a naming convention issue, which is a bit of a minor change since I think the original information came from the Dragon Age tabletop RPG Player's Handbook, which is sort of secondary to anything BioWare puts out. In that version, Avar had 3-part names. After the given name, there would be an An, meaning daughter of, or Ar, meaning son of, followed by the individual's mother's name. This would be followed by O and the individual's tribe. So you could have Loena and Aenor Ode Redhold. Loena, daughter of Aenor of Redhold, basically. BioWare instead went with similar Scandinavian patronymics, like Finn Kaldensen or Svara Janesdottin. Any Avar characters in the future will probably use this convention, I would expect. Anyway, that's it for now. Have a nice day.